Welcome guys, and in this lecture I want to discuss loops. So loops in C are just like loops in real life, right? It's kind of like something that loops around and round constantly. Well, in C you also have loops. So there's the for loop, the while loop, and the do while loop, and we're going to discuss them all right now. So let's create a for loop here. Copy what I'm doing and I'll explain it as we go along. So you represent a for loop with a for keyword. Then you have brackets. You have an initialization, which is here. You have a condition, which is here. And finally you have a loop, which is here. So what this means is create a loop that has a counter variable called I that's equal to 0. And you can see that's an integer. And then it says the condition for this loop is that I must be below 10. And then it says at the next iteration of the loop, increment I by 1. That's what the plus plus means. So essentially this loop will loop 10 times. So we can demonstrate this by doing printf I n for new line, you know, the \n for new line, and then put I in here. Now if we compile that, main.c guys, not cpp, main.c, and now if you type main, you can see it says 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's outputted that 10 times because I starts at 0 here. And you know, this could be below or equal, right? And then we would see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you know, the condition is basically an expression, much like explains in the if statements, where you can have equals equals, does not equal, above, and all that sort of stuff. So these are basically for loops. So what is basically happening is anything between these brackets here, which is a scope by the way, you know, a scope is anything between these brackets. So anything between these brackets of the for loop is basically being run on a loop. So what happens is we come in here, we create a variable called I, we set it to 0. We then check if I is below or equal 10, which it is. So we start running the loop. So we basically print the I variable value, right? Then we leave the loop, causing I to increment by here. So then I becomes 1. So then right now I is 1, yeah? And then we check this again. Is I below or equal 10? Well, I is 1, so it is below or equal 10. So then we run this again. We output the I's value. And then we leave the loop again. We increment I. And now I is equal to 2. And we go on and on and on until this condition is no longer met. And then the loop ends. So that is basically for loops for you. So let me show you how you can count backwards. Let's set I to 10. And then we want to change I to say above 0. And then change the I++ to I-. And now if we run that, compile it first, you can see 10, 9, 8, 7 and so on. Now how that works is we set I to 10. We check if I is above 0. Well, I is 10, so it is above 0. So we output the I's current value. And then we decrement I by 1. So now I is 9. I is still above 0 because I is 9, right? So then it outputs this again. So for loops are very powerful and they're used all throughout the C language when you're making projects. Okay, let's now discuss the while loop. So get rid of your for loop and we're going to go while 1. So what this does is this runs everything in here so long as the condition between these brackets is true. So remember what I said before, 1 is true. So everything in here will be run forever. If you do printf hello world, and you compile that, and you do main, you can see it says hello, hello, hello constantly, really fast, right? So that is while loops for you. So if we wanted to do something like this, similar to our for loop, we could go integer I equals 0, while I below 10, and again this will be infinite at this point currently because I is 0, so it's below 10, right? But now in here you can go I++. And now if you was to compile that, it would work similarly to the for loop. You see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's outputted hello world 10 times. So that's while loops for you. But you can also, and this applies to all the loops by the way, you can leave a loop early for whatever reason. And you do this by using the break keyword. So for example, let's say if I is equal to 2, break. And that's another thing by the way, when using if statements or any statement at all, you don't actually have to use the curly braces if your code is only one line long. So in our case we only have one line with the if statement, so we don't actually need these, and it will run that one line and leave. If you need more than one line, let's say we wanted to output a message here and break, then you can't do that. You need to use the curlies. But for one line you can use it. So essentially if your if statement is only going to have one line inside the body, between the brackets, between the curly braces, then you can use just on the line on its own without these curlies. Literally just like that, and that would work fine. So what this is going to do now, we're going to come in here, and as soon as I is equal to 2, we're going to leave this loop. That's what the break keyword does. So let's run that now. Compile it first. You can see it says hello world, hello world, hello world. So as soon as I is equal to 2, we break from the loop. So in addition to break, you also have the continue keyword that allows you to skip over an iteration. So I'll show you how to do that with the for loop. So watch this then. We're going to print out the index as before. And I'm just going to compile that to show you that that works fine. You can see that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's skip over 3. Yeah? So if I equals 3, continue. And now if we compile it now, we can see it's skipped over 3. We have 0, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3 isn't outputted. Now why is that? Because we go in here, we say if I is 3, then continue to the next iteration of the loop. I want to leave this loop for this iteration and pretend it never happened. So then it immediately skips straight to I++ and stops executing here. And then obviously I then becomes 4 and the loop continues. Is I equal to 3? No, it's 4, so continue is never called again, and we print as usual. So the final loop I want to show you is the do while loop. So let's do. Oh, and it filled it in for us. Brilliant. So essentially it's similar to the while loop apart from the condition happens last. With a traditional while loop, what happens is we say while this expression is true, run this code. Whereas in a do while loop we say run this code, and if the expression here is true, run it again. So that's the difference here. And just to demonstrate this, if I do printf first loop, and then I do printf second loop, and now if I go to here and I compile again and run that, you can see second loop is outputted. Let me just do a break here as well so we can leave, because that's currently an infinite loop, right? So you can see that only second loop is outputted. And why is that? Because here it is false, so this never gets run. But with a do while, the code's run first and then the expression's checked. So if this was 0 and we try that again, we can see second loop still runs even though it is not true. And just to get rid of the break as well, to show you that isn't what's leaving, you can see second loop still run. So essentially the expression here is 0, but because the code's run first, it doesn't reach this expression until the end. So it knows not to loop back around, but it will at least do one loop because it's a do while. Whereas the while expects the expression first, and because it's 0, it never gets run. The do while runs the code first and then expects the expression, which is why we get second loop even when 0 is here. If you have true here, it'll be an infinite loop. So that's do while and the difference between while and do while. So I hope that makes sense. Please send me a message if you have any trouble understanding that.